The fluorescent lights of the hospital flickered overhead as I rushed through the emergency room doors, my sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. It was 2 a.m., and I'd already been on shift for 14 hours. My scrubs clung to my tired body, and I could feel the exhaustion seeping into my bones. But this was what I'd signed up for, what I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl playing doctor with my stuffed animals. I was 26 years old, fresh out of nursing school, and determined to prove myself at Mercy General Hospital in downtown Chicago. I didn't know that walking through those doors that night would change everything. Nurse Bennett. "We need you in trauma too." The voice of Dr. Sarah Chen cut through the chaos of the ER. I grabbed my stethoscope and bolted toward the trauma bay, my heart pounding. This was the rush I lived for, the moment where everything else faded away and only the patient mattered. But when I pushed through those doors, I froze. Standing over the gurney, his hands moving with practiced precision as he assessed the patient, was a man who made my breath catch in my throat. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his white coat perfectly. His hair was dark with distinguished silver streaks at the temples, and when he looked up, his eyes met mine. They were the deepest blue I'd ever seen, like the ocean during a storm. Intense, focused, magnetic. "Nurse, I need you here now," he said, his voice deep and commanding but not unkind. There was authority in it, the kind that came from years of experience saving lives. I snapped back to reality and moved to his side, my professional training overriding the strange flutter in my chest. The patient was a young man, maybe early 20s, with severe injuries from a motorcycle accident. As we worked together, I found myself acutely aware of this doctor's presence. His movements were efficient, confident. His hands were steady as he made critical decisions. There was something almost beautiful about watching him work. The way he commanded the room without raising his voice, the way everyone around him seemed to elevate their own performance. "Suction," he ordered, and I was ready with it before he finished the word. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a flicker of approval there. We worked for 45 minutes straight, a seamless team despite never having worked together before. When we finally stabilized the patient and sent him up to surgery, the doctor turned to me. Up close, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the hint of stubble on his strong jaw. He had to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. "Good work, Nurse Bennett," he said, reading my name tag. "You kept your head, that's rare for someone so young." I should have taken it as the compliment it was. Instead, I bristled slightly. "I'm a professional, Doctor Sinclair, Dr. Marcus Sinclair. I'm the new head of trauma surgery." He extended his hand, and when I took it, I felt a jolt of electricity run up my arm. His grip was firm, warm, and lingered just a moment longer than necessary. "I just transferred here from Boston General." "Well, welcome to Chicago, Dr. Sinclair," I said, pulling my hand away perhaps a bit too quickly. "If you'll excuse me, I have other patients to attend to." I walked away quickly, my heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with the adrenaline of the trauma case. What was wrong with me? He was old enough to be my father. Hell, he probably had kids my age. And yet, something about him had awakened something in me that I didn't want to acknowledge. I'd always sworn I'd never be one of those women. The ones who fell for older men. The ones who became clichés. My mother had done it, left my father for a man 20 years her senior when I was 16. It had torn our family apart. I'd watched my father crumble, watched my younger sister cry herself to sleep for months. I'd promised myself I would never be like her. Never. But as I tried to focus on checking vitals on my other patients, I couldn't shake the image of those storm blue eyes or the way my body had responded to his presence. The rest of my shift was mercifully uneventful, but I couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Sinclair. Every time I heard a deep voice in the hallway, my head would snap up. Every time the trauma bay doors opened, I found myself hoping and dreading that it might be him. By the time 7 a.m. rolled around and my shift ended, I was exhausted in more ways than one. I was changing out of my scrubs in the women's locker room when my best friend and fellow nurse, Jasmine Rodriguez, burst through the door with her characteristic energy. Jaz had been my roommate since nursing school, and she could read me like a book. "Girl, I heard you worked a trauma case with the new hottie doctor," she said, her dark eyes sparkling with mischief. "Dr. Silver Fox himself, details." "Now, there are no details," I insisted, pulling on my jeans. "We worked a case, that's it." Then why are you blushing?" "I'm not." I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. My cheeks were definitely pink. "It's just warm in here." Jaz laughed, a rich, melodious sound. "Honey, I've known you for 5 years. You're a terrible liar. What happened?" I sighed and sat down on the bench, suddenly feeling the weight of my confusion. Nothing happened, Jazz. That's the point, nothing can happen. He's got to be, what, 50? 48, Jazz supplied helpfully. I may have looked at his employee file. That's unprofessional. That's resourceful, she corrected with a grin. And before you spiral into your hole, older men are the devil thing because of your mom. Let me remind you that not every age gap relationship is a disaster. My mom destroyed our family for a man old enough to have graduated high school with her parents, I said bitterly. I watched what it did to my dad. I'm not going there, Jazz. Besides, Dr. Sinclair probably doesn't even see me as anything more than another nurse. You didn't see the way he was asking about you after the case, Jazz said, her voice softer now. I was at the nurse's station when he came by. He wanted to know how long you'd been working here, what your training was. The man was interested, Mia. My stomach did a little flip. It doesn't matter. I'm not interested in him. It was a lie, and we both knew it. Over the next 3 weeks, I did everything I could to avoid Dr. Marcus Sinclair. I switched shifts when I could, took my breaks at different times, and volunteered for assignments on other floors. But Mercy General wasn't that big, and trauma cases didn't follow a convenient schedule. Inevitably, we worked together again, and again, and again. Each time I felt that same magnetic pull, the way he moved with such confidence. The way his voice could calm a panicking patient or rally a tired team. The way he remembered small details, how I liked my coffee, which patients I'd been particularly concerned about, the fact that I was studying for my critical care certification. But more than his competence, it was the glimpses of the man beneath the white coat that got to me. The way he stayed late to sit with an elderly patient who had no family. The way he always thanked the janitorial staff by name. The time I found him in the supply closet at 3 a.m., quietly crying after losing a 16-year-old patient despite doing everything right. When he'd seen me, instead of being embarrassed, he'd simply said, "The day it stops hurting is the day I need to quit." That vulnerability, that humanity, made him more attractive than any physical feature ever could. It was a Friday night in late October when everything changed. The ER was slammed. A multi-car pileup on the interstate had brought in more than a dozen critical patients. I was running on adrenaline and coffee, moving from one crisis to the next. Dr. Sinclair was in his element, coordinating the chaos with the skill of a seasoned conductor leading an orchestra. I was helping stabilize a woman with severe abdominal injuries when I heard the commotion. A man, one of the patients from the accident, had become combative, probably from a head injury. He'd pulled out his IV and was swinging at anyone who came near. Before I could react, he grabbed a metal instrument tray and hurled it across the room. Straight at me. I didn't have time to move. But suddenly a body was in front of mine, arms wrapped around me protectively. The tray hit the wall where I'd been standing with a crash. My face was pressed against a broad chest, and I could smell cedar and something else, something uniquely masculine. "Are you hurt?" Marcus's voice was rough with concern, his arms still around me. I looked up and found his face inches from mine, those blue eyes scanning me for injuries. I'm fine," I managed to say, though my heart was hammering. "Thank you." Security had subdued the patient, and the ER was returning to controlled chaos, but Marcus didn't immediately let me go. For a moment we just stood there, his arms around me, the rest of the world fading away. I could feel the solid warmth of him, the rapid beat of his heart against my cheek. "Dr. Sinclair," a voice broke through the moment. He released me immediately, stepping back with professional distance, but his eyes were full of something that made my knees weak. "We need you in Trauma 1, the voice continued. "I'll be right there," he said, but he was still looking at me. "Mia, are you sure you're okay?" The sound of my first name in his voice did something to me. We'd been Dr. Sinclair and Nurse Bennett until that moment. This felt intimate. "Dangerous? I'm sure," I whispered. He nodded but hesitated as if he wanted to say something more. Then he was gone, back to saving lives, leaving me standing there trying to remember how to breathe. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt his arms around me again. Every time I heard his voice, something inside me responded. By the time I clocked out at 7 a.m., I was a mess of confusion and exhaustion. I was walking to my car in the employee parking garage when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find Marcus, still in his scrubs, looking as tired as I felt. "Mia, wait," he called out. "Can we talk?" Every instinct told me to get in my car and drive away, to maintain the professional distance that was already crumbling, but my feet wouldn't move. "Sure," I heard myself say. He ran a hand through his hair and I noticed the silver strands catching the harsh fluorescent light. "I owe you an apology. For what? You saved me from getting hit by that tray. For, he seemed to struggle with the words. For thinking about you in ways that are completely inappropriate. You're a colleague, you're young enough to be, well, this isn't professional of me. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. What if I'm thinking about you in inappropriate ways too? The words were out before I could stop them. Marcus's eyes widened, then darkened with something that made heat pool in my belly. You shouldn't be, he said, but his voice was rough. I'm 22 years older than you, I'm your superior at work. This is a terrible idea on every level. I know, I whispered. I swore I'd never. My mother left my father for an older man. I watched it destroy my family. I promised myself I'd never be that woman. Then we agree, he said, but he was moving closer. This is a bad idea. The worst, I agreed, even as I took a step toward him. I should walk away right now. You definitely should. We were inches apart now. I could see the exhaustion on his face, the stubble on his jaw, the way his eyes traced my features as if memorizing them. My breath came in short gasps. The air between us felt electric, charged with possibility and danger. Mia, he said softly, and my name on his lips was a prayer and a plea. Tell me to walk away. I should have. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to end this before it started. But then his hand came up, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from my face, and every rational thought evaporated. I can't, I breathed. That was all the permission he needed. His lips met mine, and the world exploded into sensation. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was hunger and need and something that felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. His hands cupped my face, tilted my head back so he could deepen the kiss. I grabbed his scrub top, pulling him closer, needing to feel every inch of him against me. When we finally broke apart, both gasping for air, the reality of what we'd done crashed over us. We were in a parking garage. We worked together. This was exactly what I'd sworn never to do. Oh God, I said, stepping back. This is. We can't, I know, Marcus said, but he looked as shaken as I felt. But I'm not sorry, I should be, but I'm not. I need to go, I said, fumbling for my car keys. My hands were shaking. Mia, wait. But I was already getting into my car, starting the engine, driving away from the one thing I'd promised myself I'd never do. I called in sick for my next 2 shifts. I knew it was cowardly, but I needed time to think, time to process what had happened, time to rebuild the walls I'd spent years constructing. Jazz tried to get me to talk about it, but I couldn't. How could I explain that one kiss had shattered every promise I'd made to myself? That I couldn't stop thinking about the way Marcus's hands had felt on my face, the way his lips had moved against mine, the way my entire body had responded to him. On the 3rd day, there was a knock on our apartment door. Jazz was at work and I almost didn't answer, but something made me look through the peephole. Marcus stood on the other side, in jeans and a dark blue sweater that matched his eyes. He looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him at the hospital. I opened the door. I'm not here as your supervisor, he said immediately. I'm here as a man who hasn't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. If you want me to leave, I will, but I needed you to know that what happened. It meant something to me, you mean something to me. You don't even know me, I said, but my voice was weak. Then let me, he said simply. Have coffee with me, dinner, whatever you're comfortable with. Let me get to know you, and if after that you still think this is a bad idea, I'll respect that. But give us a chance, Mia. Please? I stood there in my doorway, wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, facing a choice. I could close the door, protect myself, maintain the walls I'd built, or I could take a leap of faith into the terrifying unknown. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to separate what I feel from what I watched my mother do. I don't know if I can trust myself. Marcus stepped closer but didn't touch me. I'm not whoever that man was, and you're not your mother. We're 2 people who feel something real. Doesn't that deserve a chance? I'm scared, I whispered. So am I, he admitted. I haven't felt this way since my wife died 8 years ago. You terrify me, Mia Bennett, but you also make me feel alive again. That revelation changed something. He was widowed, not divorced. There was no wife he was betraying, no family he was destroying. And the vulnerability in his admission that he was scared too somehow made it easier. 1 coffee, I heard myself say, but not somewhere we'll see people from the hospital. And we need to figure out the work situation. The smile that lit up his face was worth every fear. I'll pick you up in an hour, I nodded, and he left, leaving me to panic about what I'd just agreed to. That first coffee turned into a 4-hour conversation at a small cafe in a neighborhood far from the hospital. We talked about everything: his childhood in Boston, my small-town upbringing in Iowa, His late wife, Caroline, who died of ovarian cancer after 15 years of marriage. My family's implosion after my mother's affair. His love of old jazz music and terrible action movies. My secret dream of eventually becoming a nurse practitioner and working in disaster relief. With every minute that passed, I felt myself falling deeper. Not because of his age or experience, but because of who he was. The way he really listened when I talked, the way he laughed at my terrible jokes, the way he was honest about his flaws and fears. "I'm not perfect, Mia," he said at one point. "I'm set in my ways. I've been alone for 8 years and I've gotten used to it. I probably work too much. I'm terrible at texting, and I still have moments where I miss Caroline so much it physically hurts." "I have a temper," I countered. "I'm stubborn to a fault. I have trust issues that would require their own zip code, and I'm still figuring out who I am. I might want completely different things in 5 years." "Then we'll figure it out in 5 years," he said simply, reaching across the table to take my hand. "If you'll give us a chance to get there." That was the beginning. We kept it secret at work, both because of hospital policy about relationships between supervisors and subordinates, and because I wasn't ready for the judgment I knew would come. Marcus arranged to have me permanently assigned to a different team, ensuring he wasn't directly supervising me. We were careful never to show any familiarity during shifts, maintaining strict professionalism. But outside the hospital, we built something beautiful. Marcus introduced me to his world, the symphony, art galleries, restaurants with names I couldn't pronounce. But he also loved the things I loved: dive bars with live music, late-night diners, horror movie marathons. He taught me to cook proper Italian food. I taught him to loosen up and be silly. With him, I didn't feel young and inexperienced. I felt seen, valued, cherished. The physical side of our relationship was transcendent. That first night he made love to me, 6 weeks after our first coffee date, I understood for the first time why people wrote poems and songs about intimacy. Marcus was attentive, patient, passionate. He took his time learning every inch of my body, discovering what made me gasp, what made me moan, what made me come apart in his arms. There was nothing rushed or selfish about the way he touched me. Every kiss, every caress, every whispered word felt like worship. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against my skin, his hands tracing patterns on my back as we lay tangled in his sheets. "Do you have any idea what you do to me?" I kissed him deeply, pouring everything I felt into it. "Show me." And he did, over and over, until we were both exhausted and satisfied and completely connected. But it wasn't all perfect. 3 months into our relationship, we had our first real fight. I'd mentioned wanting him to meet Jazz properly, and he'd hesitated. "I'm not ready for people to know yet," he said. "It's been 3 months, Marcus. How long do we have to hide?" "I just need more time. The hospital gossip. Is that what you're worried about?" I interrupted, feeling anger bubble up. "Or are you embarrassed to be seen with someone my age?" "That's not fair," he said, his voice hardening. "I'm trying to protect your career. You're young, talented. If people think you're sleeping with an attending for advancement, I don't care what people think." "Well, I do." His voice rose to match mine. "I've seen what hospital politics can do to promising careers. I won't let that happen to you." "You don't get to make that choice for me," I shot back. "I'm an adult, Marcus. Stop treating me like a child you need to protect." "I'm not," he stopped, ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Mia, I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would be trusting me to handle my own life." I grabbed my jacket. "I'm going home. Call me when you're ready to stop hiding." I left before he could respond, tears streaming down my face. This was what I'd been afraid of, that the age difference would create an imbalance. That he would see me as someone to be managed rather than an equal partner. We didn't speak for 4 days. They were the longest 4 days of my life. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, avoiding the trauma wing where I might see him. Jazz tried to get me to talk, but I couldn't articulate the fear that maybe everyone had been right. Maybe this was a terrible idea. On the 5th day, I came home to find Marcus sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. He looked exhausted, and there was something raw in his expression when he saw me. "You were right," he said, standing up. "I was trying to protect you, but really I was just being controlling. That's not fair to you. You're not a child, and I need to stop treating you like one." I wanted to stay angry, but the sincerity in his eyes melted my resolve. "I know you were trying to help, but Marcus, if this is going to work, you have to trust me. Trust that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes." "I know you are," he said softly. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. It's one of the things I love about you." The world seemed to stop. "What did you just say?" He took a step closer. "I love you, Mia. I didn't mean to say it like this in an argument on your doorstep, but it's true, I love you. Your strength, your compassion, your terrible jokes, the way you scrunch your nose when you're thinking hard, all of it, and I'm sorry for being an idiot. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were happy ones. I love you too, even when you're being overprotective and stubborn. He pulled me into his arms, kissing me deeply, and I felt the last of my walls crumble. This was real. This was right. Age was just a number. What mattered was how we felt, how we treated each other, how we grew together. After that fight, things shifted. We started being more open about our relationship, first with close friends, then more broadly. The reactions were mixed. Some people were supportive, others were judgmental, making comments about daddy issues or midlife crises. A few nurses I'd considered friends stopped talking to me. But Marcus stood by me through all of it, and Jazz became my fiercest defender. "Anyone who judges you can come through me first," she declared one day in the break room, loud enough for the gossiping nurses to hear. "She's happy. He treats her like a queen, that's all that matters." The hospital administration was trickier. Since Marcus wasn't my direct supervisor, we weren't violating any policies, but we still got called into HR for a discussion about maintaining professionalism. It was humiliating and frustrating, but we got through it together. What surprised me most was my father's reaction. I'd been terrified to tell him, given our family history. But when I finally worked up the courage to introduce them over a video call, my dad was cautiously accepting. "He seems like a good man," he said later, when it was just the two of us. "But Mia, I have to ask, are you sure this is what you want? You're so young, you have your whole life ahead of you." "Dad, I know you worry because of what happened with Mom, but Marcus isn't like that guy. He doesn't make me feel less than. He doesn't try to control me or change me. He just loves me for exactly who I am," my father sighed. "Your mother and I were wrong for each other from the start. What happened wasn't really about age. It was about her looking for something I couldn't give her. If this man makes you happy, if he treats you right, then age is just a number on paper." That conversation lifted a weight I'd been carrying. I wasn't my mother, this wasn't history repeating itself. This was my own story. As our first year together approached, Marcus started acting strange. He was distracted, secretive, taking phone calls in another room. My insecurities flared up. Was he having second thoughts? Was the age difference finally too much? I tortured myself with scenarios but was too afraid to ask. Then, on the anniversary of our first coffee date, he took me to that same cafe. It was closed for a private event, which turned out to be us. The owner, who Marcus had apparently befriended during our regular visits, had let him reserve the entire place. There were candles everywhere and soft jazz playing, the same album that had been playing during our first date. "Mia Bennett," Marcus said, taking both my hands in his. "This year with you has been the best of my life. You've made me laugh again, dream again, feel again. You've shown me that love doesn't have an age limit or an expiration date, it just is." He got down on one knee and my heart stopped. "I know we come from different generations. I know we'll face challenges, but I also know that I want to face them with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to support your dreams and build new ones together. I want everything with you." He pulled out a ring, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the candlelight. "Will you marry me?" Through tears, I nodded. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on my finger and stood, pulling me into a kiss that felt like a promise. Like a beginning, like coming home. Of course, an engagement brought a fresh wave of commentary. Some people were genuinely happy for us. Others had opinions they felt entitled to share, about how I was making a mistake, about how he was too old to give me children, about how we'd have nothing in common as we aged. The children thing was particularly fraught. I'd always imagined being a mother someday, but Marcus had been upfront from the beginning about his hesitation. He'd never had kids with Caroline, it just hadn't happened for them, and at 49, he wasn't sure he wanted to start the journey of parenthood. "I want you to have everything you want," he said one night as we discussed it. "If children are non-negotiable for you, I'll understand, but I need to be honest, I'm not sure I want to be changing diapers at 50. It was a hard conversation, but I appreciated his honesty. "I think I want kids someday," I admitted. "But not right now, I'm still building my career. Maybe in 5 years we can revisit it." "5 years," he agreed. "And if you still want children then, we'll figure it out. Biological, adoption, fostering, we'll explore every option." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was honest. And that honesty, that willingness to have hard conversations was part of what made us work. We got married 8 months later in a small ceremony in Jazz's parents' backyard. My dad walked me down the aisle. My sister was my maid of honor, despite her initial reservations about the age gap. Marcus's best friend from medical school was his best man, and instead of traditional vows, we wrote our own. Mia, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, you've taught me that it's never too late to start over. That love doesn't follow a timeline or a rule book. You are my unexpected joy, my greatest adventure, my home. I promise to cherish you, to respect you, to grow with you, to be your partner in every sense of the word, to never take you for granted. I promise to love you not despite our differences, but because they make us stronger together. By the time it was my turn, I was crying. Marcus, I swore I'd never date a man your age. I swore I'd never be like my mother. I swore I'd protect my heart from exactly this. But your touch made me forget all those promises, because you showed me that real love doesn't fit into neat categories. Real love is about respect, partnership, growth, and joy. You've given me all of that and more. I promise to be your equal, not your dependent. To challenge you when you need challenging and support you when you need support. To love you through all the seasons of life that are coming. I promise to build a life with you that honors both where we've been and where we're going. When we kissed as husband and wife, the small crowd erupted in cheers. And for the first time since this all began, I felt no fear. No doubt, just joy. Our marriage wasn't a fairy tale. Real life never is. We had our struggles. The time Marcus's back went out and he felt ancient and useless until I reminded him that bodies age regardless and I loved him anyway. The time I got frustrated with his inability to understand social media and we had to laugh about our generational differences. The moments when his friends would make comments about how lucky he was to have a young wife, reducing me to my age rather than seeing me as a person. But we also had so much beauty. The way Marcus supported me when I decided to go back to school for my nurse practitioner degree, even though it meant less time together. The trip we took to Italy for our first anniversary, where he showed me the hospital where he'd done a fellowship, and I showed him how to take selfies. The quiet Sunday mornings reading the paper together, him the physical paper, me on my tablet, both of us laughing about the difference. The children conversation came up again when I was 31 and he was 53. We'd been married for 4.5 years and I felt that longing growing stronger. I think I'm ready, I told him one night. To start trying for a baby or to explore adoption. I know it's not what you imagined at this stage of your life, but yes, he interrupted. Yes, let's have a baby, he said, smiling. I've been thinking about it a lot. And yes, I'm older. Yes, I'll be in my 70s when the kid graduates high school. But I'll also have the wisdom and patience I wouldn't have had at 30. And more importantly, I'll get to experience parenthood with you. How could I say no to that? We started trying, but after a year with no success, we saw a fertility specialist. The news was complicated. Marcus's age was a factor, but we also discovered I had some issues that would make natural conception difficult. We were presented with options: IVF, donor sperm, adoption. It was the hardest decision we'd ever faced as a couple. There were tears, frustration, grief for the easy path we didn't have. But ultimately, we decided to pursue IVF with Marcus's sperm. It took 3 rounds and all our savings, but when I finally saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I sobbed with joy. Our daughter, Caroline Grace Sinclair, was born on a rainy April morning when I was 32 and Marcus was 54. The moment they placed her in his arms, I watched my husband fall in love all over again. The way he looked at her with such wonder and tenderness and fierce protectiveness made every struggle worth it. She's perfect, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. You're both perfect. Parenthood was harder than either of us imagined. Marcus had more energy than many men his age, but the sleepless nights took their toll. I struggled with postpartum anxiety and the challenge of balancing motherhood with my career. We fought more than we had in years, about parenting styles, about division of labor, about my frustration when people mistook him for Caroline's grandfather. But we also grew closer. Nothing bonds you quite like raising a tiny human together. Watching Marcus be a father, patient, engaged, silly, loving, made me fall for him all over again. And he said the same about watching me be a mother. When Caroline was 2, we faced our biggest challenge yet. Marcus was diagnosed with prostate cancer. It was caught early, treatable, but suddenly the age difference that had felt like just a number became very real. I had to face the reality that I might lose him far sooner than I wanted to. I'm sorry, he said after getting the diagnosis, and I could see the fear in his eyes. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. I'm sorry I'm not young and healthy. Stop, I said firmly, taking his hands. We don't get to choose when our bodies betray us. Cancer doesn't care about age. I'm here, Marcus. I'm not going anywhere. We'll fight this together. And we did. Through surgery, recovery, follow-up appointments, I juggled caring for a toddler, working part-time, and supporting my husband through treatment. There were moments I wanted to scream from exhaustion. Moments I felt the weight of being the younger, healthier partner. But there were also moments of profound gratitude, that we'd had these years together, that we'd created Caroline, that we still had time. Marcus has been cancer-free for 3 years now. He's 59, I'm 37, and Caroline is 5. She starts kindergarten next month, and she's the perfect blend of both of us. Marcus's blue eyes and my stubborn streak, his analytical mind and my compassionate heart. Last week, someone at Caroline's preschool asked if Marcus was her grandfather. She looked at them with all the confidence of a 5-year-old and said, "No, that's my daddy. He's just older than other daddies. But he's the best daddy in the whole world." That night, as we lay in bed, Marcus held me close. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly. "Choosing me, knowing we'll have less time than if you'd married someone your age?" I turned to face him, running my fingers through his now mostly silver hair. "Never, not once. Yes, you're older. Yes, we'll probably face your aging before mine. Yes, people judge us. But Marcus, you've given me 12 years of being truly seen, truly loved, truly partnered with. You've supported every dream I've ever had. You've made me a mother. You've shown me what real love looks like. I'd choose you in whatever time we have over a lifetime with anyone else." He kissed me then, deep and slow, and I felt the same electricity I'd felt in that parking garage all those years ago. Age hadn't dimmed our chemistry or our connection. If anything, time had only strengthened it. "I love you, Mia Sinclair," he whispered. "Thank you for forgetting your promises and taking a chance on an old man." "You're not old," I teased. "You're distinguished, and you're mine." As I drifted off to sleep in my husband's arms, I thought about that version of me who'd sworn she'd never date a man that age. She'd been so certain, so protected, so scared of becoming her mother. But she'd also been wrong, because real love doesn't follow rules. It doesn't care about age or timing or other people's opinions. Real love is about finding someone who sees you, values you, grows with you. Someone whose touch makes you forget every promise you ever made, because the promise you make to them is more important. Yes, Marcus is 22 years older than me. Yes, we've faced challenges. Yes, we'll probably face more as he ages, and I'm still relatively young. Yes, I might have to say goodbye to him sooner than I want to. But I'd rather have 20, 30, or 40 years of this love than a lifetime of anything less. And if I could go back to that night in the parking garage, to that moment when I kissed him for the first time, I wouldn't change a thing. Because his touch didn't just make me forget my promises, it taught me to make better ones. The promise to love honestly, the promise to choose connection over comfort, the promise to write our own story regardless of what anyone else thought, and that's a promise worth keeping. Tonight, as I write this, I'm sitting in our home office while Marcus reads Caroline a bedtime story in the next room. I can hear his voice, still deep and warm if a bit rougher with age, doing silly character voices that make our daughter giggle. In a few minutes he'll come find me, and we'll watch whatever show we're binging together. He'll fall asleep first, because he always does, and I'll watch him for a moment before waking him to go to bed properly. It's ordinary. It's beautiful. It's everything I never knew I needed. And it all started because I forgot my promise and remembered to trust my heart instead. Some people will read our story and still think I made a mistake. That the age gap is too big, that I should have chosen differently, and that's okay. They're entitled to their opinions, but I know the truth. I didn't lose myself in loving an older man. I found myself. I found the strength to choose my own path, regardless of my fears or my past. I found a partner who challenges and supports me in equal measure. I found a love that makes me better, braver, more fully myself. And I found that sometimes, the promises we swear most vehemently are the ones we're meant to break. Because on the other side of those broken promises, that's where life really begins. Marcus comes into the office now, smiling that smile that still makes my heart skip. "She wants you to come kiss her goodnight," he says, "and she wants to know if we can get a puppy." I laugh, standing up and taking his hand. "A puppy. She's really negotiating now." "She gets that from you," he says, pulling me close for a quick kiss. "The negotiations, the stubbornness, the ability to wrap me around her little finger. And she gets her kindness from you," I counter. "Her patience, her terrible dad jokes." "Hey, my jokes are excellent. They're really not." We walk hand in hand to Caroline's room, this family we've built against the odds. And as I tuck my daughter in and kiss her forehead, as Marcus wraps his arm around my waist, I feel nothing but gratitude. For the touch that made me forget. For the love that made me remember. For the life we built when I stopped being afraid and started being brave. This is our story. And I wouldn't change a single chapter, not the fear at the beginning, not the judgment we faced, not the challenges we overcame. Not even the pain we'll inevitably face when time becomes our enemy, because all of it every moment led us here, and here is exactly where I belong. Mommy, Caroline's sleepy voice breaks into my thoughts. Will you and Daddy always be together? Marcus and I exchange a look, and I see the same emotion in his eyes that I'm feeling. Always, I promise her. For all the time we have, we'll be together. And we'll make every moment count. Good, she says, her eyes already closing, because you're the best mommy and daddy in the whole world. As we close her door softly and walk back to our room, Marcus pulls me into his arms. Thank you, he whispers into my hair. For what? For forgetting your promise, for giving us a chance, for every day of these 12 years, for Caroline, for everything. I pull back to look at him, this man who changed my life. Yes, he has more gray hair now. Yes, there are more lines around his eyes. Yes, he moves a bit slower than he used to, but when I look at him, I don't see age. I see my partner, my love, my home. Thank you for making it impossible not to forget, I say. Your touch, your love, your everything. It was worth breaking every promise I ever made. We make love that night like we've been doing for 12 years, with passion, tenderness, and the deep connection that comes from truly knowing another person. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, I think about how close I came to never having this. How close I came to letting fear win. How close I came to keeping a promise that would have cost me everything. But I didn't. I chose love. I chose him, I chose us. And that choice made all the difference. Years from now, when Marcus is older still and I'm in my 40s or 50s, people will still probably judge our age gap. They'll whisper about how hard it must be to be a younger widow someday, about how I'll be alone again while I'm still relatively young. But what they won't see is this: the years of laughter, the depth of connection, the family we built, the life we shared, the love that transcended age and expectation and everyone's opinions. They won't see that I chose quality over quantity, depth over convenience, real love over easy love. They won't see that his touch didn't just make me forget my promises, it taught me what promises are actually worth making. To love fiercely, to live fully, to choose joy over fear, to write my own story. And as I drift off to sleep next to my husband, listening to his breathing even out, feeling his warmth beside me, I smile. Because I swore I'd never date a man that age, until his touch made me forget everything. And remembering to forget that promise was the best decision I ever made. This is where our story stands now, not at an ending, but at a continuation. Because love doesn't end when the credits roll. It keeps going through the mundane and the extraordinary, through challenges and celebrations, through all the messy, beautiful reality of building a life together. We don't know what the future holds. More health scares, probably. The challenges of Marcus aging while I'm still middle-aged. Caroline growing up and potentially facing judgment about her parents' age gap. All of that is ahead of us, but we'll face it together. Because that's what we promised each other on that rainy April morning when we got married and every day since. Not to let age define us, not to let fear guide us, not to let anyone else write our story. Just to love each other wholly and completely for all the time we have. And in the end, isn't that what we all want? Not a perfect love, but a real one. Not a relationship without challenges, but one worth fighting for. Not a partner who fits society's expectations, but one who fits our heart. I found that in Marcus Sinclair. And he found it in me. Not despite our age difference, but simply because we found each other. Two people who were supposed to be all wrong for each other, but turned out to be perfectly right. Two people who prove that love doesn't follow rules or timelines or anyone's expectations. Two people who show that sometimes the best thing you can do is forget what you swore and remember to follow your heart. So here's to broken promises and the love that makes breaking them worthwhile. Here's to taking chances and defying expectations. Here's to writing your own story, no matter who thinks they know better. And here's to the touch that makes you forget everything, because sometimes forgetting is the first step to finding everything you never knew you needed. This is our love story, imperfect, unconventional, judged by some, questioned by others, but ours, completely, beautifully, perfectly ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.